I pen this harrowing tale, not as a man of sound mind or esteemed position, though once I stood among the elite, one of 12 gilded figures atop the corporate world. But the lofty heights I once scaled, both in literal and moral terms, now serve only as a grim prelude to the abyss from which I narrowly escaped. An abyss that still beckons to me with its siren song of madness. The edifice pierced the sky like a needle thrust into the very fabric of heaven. Our penthouse boardroom, christened the Eyrie by the fawning press nestled within a crown of obsidian glass. A sanctum built not for mere mortals, but for gods or creatures aspiring to such blasphemous heights. We convened as was our custom crimson leather chairs encircling a long, lacquered table, its surface bearing the oily imprints of long-dead hands. One by one, the directors arrived, some adorned in bespoke suits, others wearing carefully crafted smiles. The last to enter was Hollingsworth, a man of unsettling confidence, his demeanor so calm it seemed as though his lungs had long since forsaken the need for air. He took his seat directly across from me, his pale gray eyes reflecting the polished surface of the table, but I noted with growing unease, not the light that bathed our lofty perch. The quarterly review commenced, a dance of numbers and projections. Charts ticked upward, graphs soared to impossible heights. Yet beneath the veneer of scripted confidence, something writhed and pulsed, making my skin crawl with a loathsome unease, like silk drawn across the pallid flesh of a corpse. Hollingsworth spoke, his voice no longer quite his own. I do not mean this in mere metaphor. It undulated like a violin string plucked by inhuman fingers. I cast my gaze upon my fellow board members, but to my mounting horror, none seemed to notice. Their heads hung as if in slumber, eyelids fluttering, fingers twitching in time with some unheard, eldritch rhythm. All save for me. And then, dear God, his skin moved. It quivered not with the subtle pulsations of blood and breath, but as a curtain might shift to reveal the monstrous actor behind. And what I beheld was not a man, but an abomination that defied the very laws of nature. Scales, fine and iridescent, bloomed across his temples like mold upon rotting fruit. His eyes blinked sideways, reptilian and cold. The forked tongue that flicked between his perfect teeth tasted the air as though it already claimed dominion over our mortal realm. He fixed his gaze upon me, not with surprise, nor even amusement, but with a chilling acknowledgement. You see now, he intoned, his voice doubled, reverberating as if issuing from the very bowels of the earth. I have no recollection of rising from my seat. I remember only the banshee shriek of my chair as it flew backward, and the paralyzing dread that froze my limbs as the other board members twitched in unison, their eyes snapping open, not glazed, not empty, but ablaze with that same hideous emerald flame. They were not men. Not anymore. The boardroom's glass groaned as I sprinted for the elevator, my heart thundering in my chest. It was too far, too slow. I pivoted, bolting down the fire stairs, each level descending into deeper darkness. The lights flickered and strobed, casting grotesque shadows that danced upon the walls. Something moved behind me, scaling the stairwell ceiling, its claws clicking on steel like hail upon a tombstone. I burst onto the 68th floor, stumbling into the executive lounge, only to find it draped in shadows and echoes. In the mirror behind the bar, I caught a glimpse of a tail slithering past his tail, and from the ceiling above, a voice trickled down like oil through a rusted grate. We have always been here, Clarence. We wore your skins long before your grandfather held a pen. We have watched empires rise and bleed. You are nothing but a flicker in the grand tapestry of our existence. With trembling hands, I smashed a bottle and fled, its jagged remnants clutched in my fist like a talisman against the encroaching darkness. Each floor I descended became a new circle of madness faces I once shook hands with, now elongated, distorted, split-mouthed, waiting, whispering, watching with eyes that gleamed with ancient malevolence. The lobby exists only as a blur in my fractured memory. The street, a cacophony of horns and shouts, fades into the mists of terror. I awoke 2 days hence in a fetid alley, drenched in filth and feathers, my fingers wrapped around a platinum cufflink engraved with a serpent devouring its own tail, a mocking reminder of the nightmare I had witnessed. No one believes my tale of horror. They smile with patronizing concern. They nod with false understanding. They recommend a sabbatical, as though mere rest could erase the eldritch truths now etched upon my very soul. But I know. Oh, how I know. They still reside in that tower of glass and steel, wearing suits and stolen skins, sipping brandy over merger proposals and the futures of unsuspecting mortals. And every night, as I huddle in the darkness of my self-imposed exile, I hear the hiss behind the wind, a whispered promise that chills me to my very marrow. You saw us once. You will see again. In the days that followed my escape from that accursed tower, I found myself adrift in a sea of doubt and paranoia. The city, once a playground of ambition and opportunity, now seemed a labyrinth of shadows and secrets. Every reflective surface became a potential portal, every stranger a possible vessel for those things that lurked behind human facades. I sought refuge in dingy motels and forgotten bars, paying with crumpled bills I'd stuffed into my pockets during my frantic flight. Sleep eluded me, for in my dreams I saw only scaled hands signing contracts in blood, forked tongues tasting the air of boardrooms where the fate of nations was decided. One night, driven by a desperate need for answers, I returned to the base of that monolithic tower. It stood as it always had, a monument to human hubris and inhuman machinations. The lobby gleamed with marble and brass, a temple to commerce that now seemed a mockery of all I once held dear. As I stood there, a trembling wreck in rumpled clothes, a security guard approached. His face was kind, his uniform crisp. "Can I help you, sir?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. For a moment, hope flared in my chest. Perhaps here was an ally, someone untouched by the corruption that festered above. But as our eyes met, I saw a flicker of green, a sideways blink that lasted less than a heartbeat. I fled once more, my shoes squeaking on the polished floor, the guards' calls echoing behind me like the laughter of demons. Days blurred into weeks. I found myself in libraries, poring over ancient tomes of forgotten lore, seeking any scrap of information that might explain the horrors I had witnessed. Myths of shapeshifters, legends of reptilian beings that walked as men, all seemed pale shadows of the truth I now knew. In my darkest moments, I contemplated ending it all, of freeing myself from the burden of knowledge that weighed upon my soul. But always the thought stayed my hand. If I fell, who would remain to warn the world? It was in this state of despair that I received the letter. No return address, no postmark, just my name scrawled in an elegant hand I recognized all too well. Hollingsworth's penmanship, unmistakable even in its inhuman perfection. With trembling fingers, I broke the seal, a wax impression of that same Ouroboros that haunted my nightmares. The message within was brief, but it sent ice through my veins. The board convenes at midnight. Your seat awaits. As the clock struck 12, I found myself once more at the foot of that accursed tower. The lobby was deserted, the elevator waiting, its doors yawning open like the maw of some great beast. I stepped inside, my heart pounding a frantic rhythm against my ribs. The ascent seemed to take an eternity, each floor passing like the turning of cosmic gears, inexorably drawing me toward my fate. The doors opened onto the familiar corridor, the boardroom beyond shrouded in shadow. As I approached, I heard their voices, a cacophony of hisses and whispers that spoke of deals struck in the dark places between worlds. My hand rested on the door handle, cool metal against my fevered skin. In that moment, I stood at the precipice of revelation and madness. To enter was to embrace a truth that no mortal mind was meant to comprehend. To flee was to condemn myself to a life of fear and doubt, forever haunted by the knowledge of what lurked above. With a deep breath, I made my choice. The door swung open and I stepped into the abyss. What awaited me there, dear reader, I dare not say. For some truths are too terrible to be spoken, some secrets too dark to be revealed. But know this, in the towers that scrape the sky, in the boardrooms where the fate of millions is decided, there are things that wear the skins of men, things that have always been and always will be, and they are watching, always watching,